I never imagined I'd be starting over at 58, not as a mother, but as a grandmother with a baby on my hip and a world of worry in my heart. My name is Marianne, and if you'd told me 20 years ago that I'd be raising my grandson as my own, I would have smiled politely and said, "That's not how life works." But life, as I've learned, has a way of surprising you, sometimes with joy, sometimes with heartbreak, and sometimes with both at once. I grew up in a small town in Normandy, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your business. I married young to a man named Luke, and we built a life together in a stone house with blue shutters and a garden full of roses. We had one daughter, Isabel, who was the light of our lives, bright, beautiful, and always a little wild. Luke passed away far too soon, a heart attack in his sleep when Isabel was just 16. After that, it was just the two of us, mother and daughter, trying to find our way through the world. Isabel was always restless. She left home at 18, chasing dreams in Paris, and for a while, I only heard from her in postcards and hurried phone calls. She came back home at 24, pregnant and alone, her eyes shadowed with secrets she wouldn't share. She gave birth to a boy, my grandson, Julian, a rainy spring morning, and for a few months, it felt like we might become a family again. But Isabel was never meant for small-town life. She stayed just long enough to recover, then left one night without a word, leaving Julian in my arms and a note on the kitchen table. "Mamang, I can't do this. Please take care of him. I love you both." I never saw her again, so I became a mother again, this time to a baby who wasn't mine by birth, but who became mine in every way that mattered. Julian was a quiet baby, watchful and serious, with his mother's dark eyes and a stubborn streak that reminded me of Luke. I was older, more tired, but I loved him fiercely. I promised myself and him that I would give him the best life I could. Raising a child on your own is never easy, but raising a grandchild is a different kind of hard. I was out of practice. My friends were all talking about retirement and travel, and here I was, buying diapers and formula, learning lullabies, all over again. The town had opinions, of course. Some people were kind, bringing casseroles and hand-me-down clothes. Others whispered behind my back, speculating about Isabel, about me, about what kind of family we were. But I didn't care. Julian was my world. I found work as a part-time secretary at the Mairie, and we made do. Our days were simple: mornings in the garden, afternoons at the park, evenings reading stories by the fire. I watched him grow, each milestone a small miracle. His first steps, his first words, the way he would reach for my hand when he was scared. Money was always tight. I dipped into my savings more than I should have, telling myself it was just for now, just until things got easier. I put off repairs on the house, skipped holidays, bought my clothes secondhand. I told myself it was worth it, that one day Julie would understand the sacrifices I made. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. Julian started school at 5, a shy boy with a mop of brown hair and a quick, nervous smile. He struggled at first. He was smaller than the other children, quieter, more sensitive, but he was smart, and he worked hard. I went to every parent-teacher meeting, baked cakes for the school fair, cheered him on at every sports day. I wanted him to know he was loved, that he belonged. As he grew, so did my hopes for him. I dreamed of seeing him graduate, of watching him find his place in the world. I dreamed of a quiet retirement, of days spent in the garden, of evenings with a book and a cup of tea. I dreamed of peace, of rest, of knowing that I had done my job. But life, as I've learned, doesn't always go the way you plan. There were signs, even in those early years, that things might not be as easy as I hoped. Julian was a good boy, but he was restless, like his mother. He asked questions I couldn't answer about Isabel, about why she left, about why other children had fathers and he did not. I tried to be honest, but some truths are too heavy for a child. I told him his mother loved him, that she was just lost, that families come in all shapes and sizes. He accepted my answers, but I could see the longing in his eyes. He wanted more than I could give him, more family, more certainty, more answers. I did my best to fill the gaps, to be both mother and grandmother, to give him a sense of home. The years passed quickly. Julian grew taller, his voice deepened, his world expanded beyond our little house. He made friends, discovered football, started spending more time away from home. I missed the days when he would curl up beside me on the sofa, when his world was small enough for me to protect. But I was proud of him. He was kind, thoughtful, and smart. He helped me in the garden, carried groceries home from the market, made me laugh with his silly jokes. I told myself that I had done well, that Luke would be proud of the man Julian was becoming. I started to think about the future, about retirement, about what would happen when Julian was grown. I had a small pension, some savings, and the house. I dreamed of traveling, of seeing the sea again, of maybe finding a little peace after so many years of worry. But life, as I've learned, has a way of surprising you. I didn't know then how quickly everything could change. I didn't know how fragile happiness could be, how easily trust could be broken. I didn't know that the boy I had raised as my own would one day make a choice that would shatter everything I had built. But I would learn, oh, I would learn. If you had asked me, in those early years, whether I ever resented the sacrifices I made for Julian, I would have said no. I would have meant it. To love, when it's real, makes the hardest things feel not just bearable, but necessary. I never saw myself as a martyr. I was just a grandmother doing what needed to be done, the way women in my family always had. But sacrifice has a way of creeping into your bones, of settling in the quiet spaces of your life. It's not just the big things, the lost sleep, the missed opportunities, the money that disappears faster than you can earn it. It's the small, daily choices that add up over years, the shoes you don't buy, the trips you don't take, the invitations you turn down because you can't leave a child alone or afford a sitter. It's the way you learn to say maybe next year until the years run out. I remember the first time I realized how much my world had shrunk. Julian was 7, and he'd been invited to a birthday party at a classmate's house. I stood in the hallway, watching him tie his shoes, his face bright with excitement. He looked up at me and said, "Will you come to Mamie?" I smiled and shook my head. "It's just for children, darling. I'll pick you up after." He nodded, but I saw the flicker of worry in his eyes. He was always a little anxious, always looking for reassurance. When I got home, the house felt too quiet. I wandered from room to room, picking up toys, folding laundry, listening for the sound of his voice. I realized, with a pang, that I didn't know what to do with myself when he wasn't there. My friends were busy with their own lives, some traveling, some caring for grandchildren of their own, some simply enjoying the freedom of retirement. I had lost touch with most of them, not out of bitterness, but because our lives no longer fit together. I tried to keep up appearances. I joined a book club at the library, went to church on Sundays, volunteered at the community center when I could. But I always felt like an outsider, a woman out of step with her own generation. Other grandmothers talked about visits and holidays, about spoiling their grandchildren and then sending them home. I nodded and smiled, but I never told them the truth, that my grandson was my whole world, that I was both mother and father, that there was no one else to send him home to. Money was always a worry. My job at the Mary paid just enough to cover the basics, but there was never anything left over. I learned to stretch every euro, to shop the sales, to make soup from whatever was left in the fridge. I put off repairs on the house, patched Julian's clothes, cut my own hair in the bathroom mirror. I told myself it was temporary, that things would get easier as he grew older, but the truth was, I was always one unexpected bill away from disaster. There were moments of joy. Julian was a sweet, thoughtful boy, quick to laugh and eager to help. He loved to read, and we spent hours curled up together with books from the library. He was curious about everything: why the sky was blue, how bread was made, where his mother had gone. I did my best to answer his questions, but some answers were too hard to give. He asked about Isabel often, especially at night when the house was quiet and the shadows seemed to grow. "Do you think she'll ever come back, Mamie?" He would whisper, his voice small and hopeful. I would hold him close and say, "I don't know, darling, but I know she loves you." It was the only truth I could offer. As Julian grew, so did my worries. He was a sensitive child, easily hurt by unkind words or rough play. He struggled to make friends, often coming home from school with stories of being left out or teased. I tried to encourage him, to help him find his place, but I could see the loneliness settling in his eyes. I worried, too, about the future. I was getting older, my body slower, my energy not what it once was. I wondered what would happen to Julian if something happened to me. I had no siblings, no close relatives who could take him in. I started to put money aside, a little each month, hoping to build a small safety net for him. It wasn't much, but it was all I could do. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. There were good times, 2 holidays spent together, birthdays celebrated with homemade cakes, quiet evenings in the garden watching the stars. I tried to give Julian a sense of normalcy, of stability, of home. I wanted him to feel safe, to know that he was loved, even if our family didn't look like everyone else's. When Julian was 10, he started playing football with a local team. He was small for his age, but quick and determined. I went to every match, cheering from the sidelines, my heart swelling with pride every time he touched the ball. The other parents were kind, inviting us to barbecues and picnics, including us in their circle. For the first time in years, I felt like part of a community. But even then, there were reminders of how different our life was. At the end of the season, the team organized a trip to the seaside. Julian was desperate to go, but the cost was more than I could afford. I tried to hide my disappointment, telling him we would have our own adventure at home, but I saw the way his face fell, the way he tried to be brave. That night, after he went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and cried. I felt like I was failing him, like no matter how hard I tried, it would never be enough. I thought about calling Isabel, about begging her to help, but I didn't know where she was, or if she would even care. I made a promise to myself that night I would do whatever it took to give Julian the life he deserved. I would work harder, save more, find a way to make things better. I started taking on extra hours at the Mary, cleaning offices in the evenings, babysitting for neighbors on weekends. The days were long, the work exhausting, but I told myself it was worth it. Julian noticed the change. He asked why I was so tired, why I was gone so much. I tried to reassure him, to tell him it was just for a little while, but I could see the worry in his eyes. He started helping more around the house, making his own breakfast, doing his homework without being asked. He grew up faster than I wanted, learning to be independent, to take care of himself. There were moments when I resented the sacrifices, when I longed for the freedom my friends enjoyed. I envied their stories of travel, of quiet mornings with coffee and a book, of evenings spent with partners or friends. I envied their ease, their lightness, their sense of possibility, but I never envied their love. Julian was my heart, my reason for getting up in the morning, my hope for the future. As he entered his teenage years, the challenges grew. He became more withdrawn, spending hours in his room, his face lit by the glow of a computer screen. He was moody, quick to anger, impatient with my questions. I tried to give him space, to trust that he would come back to me, but I worried about the things I couldn't see, the friends I didn't know, the secrets he kept. I started to notice small changes, money missing from my purse, unexplained absences, a new phone I hadn't bought. When I asked, he shrugged, said it was nothing, that I was worrying too much. I wanted to believe him, but the doubt lingered. I told myself it was just a phase, that all teenagers go through it, that he would find his way. I tried to remember the boy he had been, the boy who held my hand, who asked 1,000 questions, who looked at me as if I held all the answers. I tried to hold on to hope, but hope, I would learn, is not always enough. If you had asked me, when Julian was a little boy, what I hoped for his future, I would have said the same things any mother or grandmother would say: happiness, health, a good education, a life better than my own. I wanted him to have choices, to feel safe, to know he was loved. I wanted him to grow up free from the shadows that had haunted his mother, to find his own way in the world. For a long time, it seemed possible. Julian was a bright child, curious and eager to learn. He loved books, especially stories about faraway places and brave heroes. He would sit on my lap for hours, listening to me read, his eyes wide with wonder. He asked endless questions about the world, about his mother, about why things were the way they were. I did my best to answer, but sometimes the questions were too big. The answers to painful. School was both a blessing and a challenge. Julian was shy, slow to make friends, but he worked hard and his teachers liked him. I went to every parent-teacher meeting, proud of his progress, worried about his loneliness. The other children seemed to sense that he was different, a boy raised by his grandmother, with no father, and a mother who was little more than a ghost. Some were kind, others less so. There were days when he came home in tears, days when he refused to talk, days when I wondered if I was doing enough. I tried to fill the gaps. I signed him up for football, for art classes, for anything that might help him find his place. I invited his classmates over for birthdays, baked cakes shaped like dinosaurs and spaceships, organized treasure hunts in the garden. Sometimes Wooktie would come home laughing, his cheeks flushed with excitement. Other times, he would retreat to his room, silent and withdrawn. As he grew older, the challenges changed. The questions about his mother became more pointed, more urgent. Why did she leave Mamie? Did I do something wrong? I held him close, told him it wasn't his fault, that Isabel loved him in her own way, that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes they can't fix. He nodded, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. I wrote to Isabel, sent photos and letters, hoping she would respond. Sometimes she did a postcard from Spain, a birthday card with a few lines of hurried script. But she never called, never visited, never asked about Julian's life. I stopped telling him when I wrote, stopped showing him the cards. It was easier that way, less painful than watching his hope fade. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to my stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. Money was always tight, but I did my best to hide it from Julian. I wanted him to feel secure, to know that he could count on me. I worked extra hours, took on odd jobs, sold things I no longer needed. I put off repairs on the house, patched his clothes, made do with what we had. I told myself it was temporary, that things would get better, that one day I would be able to give him more. There were moments of joy, summer evenings in the garden, watching the fireflies dance, winter mornings curled up by the fire, reading stories and drinking hot chocolate, walks by the river, collecting stones and skipping them across the water. I tried to create memories for him, to give him a sense of home, of belonging. But as Julian entered adolescence, the distance between us grew. He became more independent, more secretive. He spent hours in his room, his face lit by the glow of a computer screen. He made new friends, boys I didn't know, boys with loud voices and restless energy. He started coming home later, his answers short and evasive. I worried, of course. I tried to set boundaries, to keep him safe, but he pushed back, testing the limits of my patience and love. "You don't understand, Mamie," he would say, his voice sharp with frustration. "I'm not a little kid anymore. I can take care of myself." I wanted to tell him that I understood better than he thought, that I, too, had once dreamed of escape, of adventure. But life had other plans for me. I stayed because someone had to, because love sometimes means sacrifice. But I kept those thoughts to myself. Instead, I watched him go, my heart aching with pride and fear. There were signs, even then, that things were changing. Julian started skipping school, coming home with stories that didn't add up. I found cigarettes in his jacket, money missing from my purse, a new phone I hadn't bought. When I asked, he shrugged, said it was nothing, that I was worrying too much. I wanted to believe him, but the doubt lingered. I tried to talk to his teachers, to the parents of his friends, but no one seemed to know what was going on. "He's a good boy," they said, "just going through a phase." I wanted to believe them, but I saw the way he looked at me, defiant, distant, a stranger in my own home. I started to worry about the future. I was getting older, my body slower, my energy not what it once was. I wondered what would happen to Julian if something happened to me. I had no siblings, no close relatives who could take him in. I started to put money aside, a little each month, hoping to build a small safety net for him. It wasn't much, but it was all I could do. There were moments when I resented the sacrifices, when I longed for the freedom my friends enjoyed. I envied their stories of travel, of quiet mornings with coffee and a book, of evenings spent with partners or friends. I envied their ease, their lightness, their sense of possibility. But I never envied their love. Julian was my heart, my reason for getting up in the morning, my hope for the future. As he entered his teenage years, the challenges grew. He became more withdrawn, spending hours in his room, his face lit by the glow of a computer screen. He was moody, quick to anger, impatient with my questions. I tried to give him space, to trust that he would come back to me. But I worried about the things I couldn't see, the friends I didn't know, the secrets he kept. I started to notice small changes: money missing from my purse, unexplained absences, a new phone I hadn't bought. When I asked, he shrugged, said it was nothing, that I was worrying too much. I wanted to believe him, but the doubt lingered. I told myself it was just a phase, that all teenagers go through it, that he would find his way. I tried to remember the boy he had been, the boy who held my hand, who asked 1,000 questions, who looked at me as if I held all the answers. I tried to hold on to hope, but hope, I would learn, is not always enough. The years passed quickly. Julian grew taller, his voice deepened, his world expanded beyond our little house. He made friends, discovered football, started spending more time away from home. I missed the days when he would curl up beside me on the sofa, when his world was small enough for me to protect, but I was proud of him. He was kind, thoughtful, and smart. He helped me in the garden, carried groceries home from the market, made me laugh with his silly jokes. I told myself that I had done well, that Luke would be proud of the man Julian was becoming. I started to think about the future, about retirement, about what would happen when Julian was grown. I had a small pension, some savings, and the house. I dreamed of traveling, of seeing the sea again, of maybe finding a little peace after so many years of worry. But life, as I've learned, has a way of surprising you. I didn't know then how quickly everything could change. I didn't know how fragile happiness could be, how easily trust could be broken. I didn't know that the boy I had raised as my own would one day make a choice that would shatter everything I had built. But I would learn. Oh, I would learn. If you've ever raised a teenager, you know the feeling, the sense that the child you once knew has been replaced by a stranger overnight. One day, Julian was still my little boy, asking for help with his homework, laughing at my silly jokes, curling up beside me on the sofa. The next, he was taller than me, his voice deep and unfamiliar, his moods shifting like the weather. He started closing his door, locking it sometimes, and I would stand in the hallway, my hand raised to knock, wondering if I was intruding on a world I no longer understood, that it started with small things. He stopped telling me where he was going, after school, started coming home later and later. When I asked, he would shrug, his eyes sliding away from mine. Just out with friends, Mamie. Don't worry. But I did worry. I worried all the time. His grades slipped. Teachers called to say he wasn't turning in assignments, that he seemed distracted in class. I tried to talk to him, to help him get back on track, but he pushed me away. You don't get it, he snapped one night, slamming his bedroom door. You're not my mother. You don't know what it's like. The words stung more than I wanted to admit. I knew I wasn't his mother. Not really. I was just the woman who had picked up the pieces when Isabel left, who had tried to build a life for him out of what she had left behind. I wondered if he resented me for it, if he blamed me for the things he didn't have. I tried to give him space, to trust that he would come back to me, but the distance between us grew. He started spending time with a new group of friends, boys, rough around the edges, with motorbikes and loud music, and a swagger that made me uneasy. I saw the way they looked at me when they came to the house, the way they laughed when I asked them to take off their shoes or keep their voices down. One evening, I found a pack of cigarettes in Julian's jacket. I confronted him, my voice shaking, with anger and fear. Where did you get these? You know how dangerous they are. He rolled his eyes, snatching the pack from my hand. Everyone smokes, Mamie. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal, I insisted. You're too young, and you know how much your grandfather suffered with his lungs. He shrugged, turning away. Whatever. I wanted to ground him, to take away his phone, to forbid him from seeing his friends. But I was tired, and I knew that rules only work if you have the energy to enforce them. I tried to reason with him, to remind him of the things we had always valued: honesty, kindness, respect, but he seemed to have built a wall between us, and I didn't know how to climb over it. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. The secrets grew. I started to notice money missing from my purse, small amounts at first, then larger sums. When I asked, Julian denied it, his face a mask of innocence. Maybe you just forgot, Mamie. You're always so busy. I wanted to believe him, but the doubt gnawed at me. He started coming home with new things: a watch, a pair of expensive trainers, a leather jacket I knew I hadn't bought. When I asked where they came from, he shrugged. A friend gave them to me. Don't worry about it. But I did worry. I worried all the time. I tried to talk to his teachers, to the parents of his friends, but no one seemed to know what was going on. He's a good boy, they said. Just going through a phase. I wanted to believe them, but I saw the way he looked at me, defiant, distant, a stranger in my own home. The arguments became more frequent, more bitter. He accused me of being controlling, of not trusting him, of trying to keep him from living his own life. I accused him of being secretive, of shutting me out, of forgetting the family we had left. Sometimes, after a fight, I would find him sitting on the back steps, his head in his hands, and I would want to go to him, to hold him, to tell him that everything would be all right. But I was afraid of saying the wrong thing, of making things worse, that there were moments of tenderness, too. Sometimes, late at night, I would hear him moving around the house, and I would find him in the kitchen, making a sandwich, or staring out the window. We would sit together in silence, the distance between us shrinking for a moment. He would tell me about his day, about his friends, about the things that scared him. I would listen, grateful for the chance to be close to him again. But those moments were rare, and they never lasted. The next day, he would be gone again, lost in a world I couldn't reach. I started to worry about the future. I was getting older, my body slower, my energy not what it once was. I wondered what would happen to Julian if something happened to me. I had no siblings, no close relatives who could take him in. I started to put money aside, a little each month, hoping to build a small safety net for him. It wasn't much, but it was all I could do. I tried to talk to him about the future, about his plans, about what he wanted to do after school. He shrugged. Uninterested. I don't know, Mamie. Maybe I'll get a job. Maybe I'll travel. I just want to get out of here. I understood the urge to escape. I had felt it myself, once. But I wanted more for him. I wanted him to have choices, to feel safe, to know he was loved. The cracks in our relationship grew wider. I started to feel like I was losing him, like the boy I had raised was slipping away, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. I blamed myself, wondered if I had done something wrong, if I had failed him in some fundamental way. I tried to reach out to Isabel, to ask for advice, to beg her to come home and help, but my letters went unanswered, my calls unreturned. I felt alone, overwhelmed, and afraid. The town noticed the change in Julian too. Neighbors who had once smiled and waved now looked at him with suspicion. I heard whispers about the company he kept, about the trouble he was getting into. I wanted to defend him, to tell them that he was a good boy, that he was just lost. But I wasn't sure I believed it myself. One night, after a particularly bitter argument, Julian stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands shaking, my heart pounding with fear. I waited for hours, listening for the sound of his footsteps, the creak of the gate, the jingle of his keys. When he finally came home, it was nearly dawn. He looked exhausted, his eyes red, his clothes rumpled. "Where have you been?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger and relief. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "Out. With who?" "Doing what? Just out, Mamie. Leave it alone." I wanted to press him, to demand answers, but I was too tired. I watched him disappear into his room, the door closing softly behind him. I sat at the table until the sun came up, wondering how things had gotten so far off track. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. I started to keep a journal, writing down my fears, my hopes, my prayers for Julian. I wrote about the boy he had been, the man I hoped he would become. I wrote about the sacrifices I had made, the love I felt, the pain of watching him slip away. I told myself it was just a phase, that he would come back to me, that love was enough. But deep down, I knew that something had changed, that the trust between us had been broken in ways I didn't know how to fix. I didn't know then how much more I would have to lose before I found my way back to him. I didn't know how much it would hurt or how much strength it would take to forgive. But I would learn. Oh, I would learn. If you had asked me, in those years when Julian was on the edge of adulthood, what I dreamed of for myself, I would have hesitated. For so long, my dreams had been about him, his happiness, his safety, his future. But as I watched the lines deepen on my face and felt the ache in my bones each morning, I started to imagine a life beyond worry. I started to dream, quietly, of rest. I never wanted much. I didn't dream of cruises or luxury or grand adventures. I dreamed of small things. A morning spent in the garden with a cup of coffee, a trip to the sea to smell the salt air, a quiet evening with a book and no fear of the phone ringing with bad news. I dreamed of peace, of knowing that I had done my job, that Julian was safe and settled, that I could finally let go. I began to plan for retirement, counting the years and the EUROS, making lists of things I wanted to do. I had a small pension from the Mary, a bit of savings, and the house. I told myself it would be enough. I imagined fixing the leaky roof, repainting the shutters, planting new roses in the garden. I imagined inviting friends for tea, joining a painting class, maybe even traveling to see my cousin in Brittany. Julian was finishing school, and though his grades had never fully recovered, he managed to scrape by. He talked about getting a job, maybe apprenticing with a local mechanic, maybe working in construction. He was restless, still, but there was a new seriousness in him, a sense that he understood the weight of the world a little better. One evening, as we sat together in the kitchen, he surprised me. "Mamie, I know you've done everything for me. I want to help now. I want to get a job, start paying my way, maybe even save up for my own place." I looked at him, my heart swelling with pride and relief. "You don't have to rush, Julian. You're still so young." He shook his head, his eyes earnest. I want you to rest. You've worked so hard. You deserve to enjoy your life." It was the first time he had ever said anything like that. I felt tears prick my eyes, and I reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "Thank you, darling. That means more to me than you know." He smiled, a little shy, a little proud. "I mean it, Mamie. I want to take care of you now." For a while, things seemed to settle. Julian found a job at a local garage, working long hours but coming home with stories of engines and customers and the satisfaction of earning his own money. He started paying for his own clothes, his own phone, even contributing a little to the groceries. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a sense that maybe, just maybe, we had turned a corner. I started to let myself dream again. I made plans to fix up the house, to take a trip to the coast, to buy a new set of paints, and start sketching the garden. I even joined a local walking group, meeting other women my age who were also learning to reclaim their lives after years of caring for others. Julian seemed happier, too. He brought friends home for dinner, laughed more easily, even started talking about taking night classes to learn more about mechanics. He promised me, over and over, that he would never leave me, that he would always be there to help. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart, but even as I let myself hope, there were small signs that all was not well. Julian was still secretive about money, sometimes borrowing small amounts and promising to pay me back. He started coming home late again, sometimes smelling of beer, sometimes with a bruise or a cut he couldn't explain. When I asked, he would brush me off, saying it was nothing, that I worried too much. I tried to trust him, to believe in the promises he made. I wanted so badly to believe that we had made it through the worst, that the years of struggle and sacrifice had finally paid off. I wanted to believe that I could rest, that I could let go. But the doubt lingered, a shadow at the edge of my dreams. One afternoon, as I was sorting through old papers in the attic, I found the envelope where I kept my savings. I opened it, expecting to see the small stack of bills I had been adding to for years, but the envelope was nearly empty. My heart pounded as I counted the money, less than half of what should have been there. I tried to tell myself I had made a mistake, that I had forgotten a withdrawal, that I had spent more than I remembered. But deep down, I knew the truth I didn't want to face. That evening, I waited for Julian to come home. When he walked through the door, I tried to keep my voice steady. "Julian, can we talk?" He looked at me, wary. "What's wrong, Mamie?" I held up the envelope. "Do you know what happened to the money I was saving?" He hesitated, his eyes flickering away. I borrowed some. I meant to put it back. I just needed it for a few things." "For what?" I asked, my voice trembling. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "Just stuff. I'll pay you back, I promised." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that this was just a mistake, a misunderstanding. But the doubt was there, growing stronger with every word. I tried to let it go, to tell myself it was just a small setback, that Julian would make it right. But the worry gnawed at me, keeping me awake at night, making me question everything I thought I knew. I started to watch him more closely, to keep track of the money, to ask more questions. He grew defensive, angry, accusing me of not trusting him, of treating him like a child. The arguments returned, sharper and more painful than before. I felt the dream slipping away, the hope I had clung to for so long unraveling at the edges. I held on, telling myself that love was enough, that we would find our way back to each other. I didn't know then how much more I would have to lose before I learned the truth. But I would learn. Oh, I would learn. I have always believed that trust is built in small, everyday moments. It's in the way you hand someone your house keys, the way you leave your wallet on the kitchen table, The way you fall asleep knowing the person in the next room would never hurt you. For years, I trusted Julian with everything I had, my home, my heart, my future. I never imagined that trust could be broken so quietly, so completely, until the day I realized my savings were gone. After I found the envelope nearly empty, I tried to convince myself it was a mistake. I went through my notebooks, checking every withdrawal, every bill paid, every small expense. I counted and recounted, hoping I had simply forgotten something. But the numbers didn't add up. Hundreds of euros were missing, money I had set aside for repairs, for emergencies, for the small dreams I still allowed myself. I wanted to believe Julian when he said he had borrowed it, that he would pay it back. I wanted to believe that this was just a misunderstanding, a moment of poor judgment. But as the days passed, I noticed more things missing. My mother's gold locket, a silver bracelet Luke had given me on our anniversary, a set of antique coins I had kept in a box in the bedroom. At first, I thought I had misplaced them. That age was playing tricks on my memory. But deep down, I knew. I started to watch Julian more closely. He was restless, irritable, spending more time out of the house, coming home late and avoiding my questions. When I asked about the missing things, he shrugged, his eyes sliding away from mine. I don't know, Mamie. Maybe you lost them. You're always forgetting things. The words stung. I wanted to shout, to demand the truth, but I was afraid of what I might hear, afraid of losing him completely. I tried to hold on to the hope that this was just a phase, that he would come back to me, that love would be enough, but the evidence kept piling up. I found receipts for things I hadn't bought: electronics, clothes, meals at restaurants I'd never visited. I found a credit card statement with charges I didn't recognize. When I confronted Julian, he grew angry, defensive, accusing me of spying on him, of not trusting him. You're making a big deal out of nothing, he snapped one night, slamming his bedroom door. I said I'd pay you back. Why can't you just let it go? Because I couldn't. Because every euro missing was a piece of my future, a piece of the life I had worked so hard to build. Because every lie was a crack in the foundation of the trust we had shared. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. I tried to talk to friends, to ask for advice, but it was hard to admit what was happening. I felt ashamed, embarrassed, as if I had failed, not just as a grandmother, but as a person. I saw the pity in their eyes, the relief that it wasn't their child, their family, their life unraveling. I started to keep my purse with me at all times, to lock the bedroom door when I left the house. I hated the way it made me feel suspicious, paranoid, like a stranger in my own home, but I didn't know what else to do. The final straw came one afternoon when I went to the bank to withdraw money for groceries. The teller looked at me with concern. Madame Laurent, your account is overdrawn. There have been several large withdrawals in the past month. My hands shook as I asked for a printout of the transactions. There, in black and white, were withdrawals I hadn't made, hundreds of euros at a time, taken from ATMs all over town. I felt sick, dizzy, as if the ground had shifted beneath my feet. When Julian came home that evening, I was waiting for him in the kitchen. The bank statements spread out on the table. Sit down, I said, my voice trembling. He looked at the papers, then at me, his face closing off. What's this? You know what it is, I said quietly. You've been taking money from my account. You've been selling my things. Why, Julian, why would you do this? He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw clenched. I needed the money. I was in trouble. I thought I could fix it before you noticed. In trouble? What kind of trouble? He looked away, his shoulders slumping. I owed some people money. I made some bad choices. I'm sorry, Mamie. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. I felt a wave of anger, of grief, of betrayal so deep it took my breath away. You could have come to me. You could have told me the truth. He shook his head, tears in his eyes. I was scared. I didn't want you to be disappointed in me. I wanted to hold him, to comfort him, to tell him that everything would be all right. But I couldn't. Not this time. The hurt was too fresh, the trust too broken. I am disappointed, Julian, I said softly, but more than that, I'm hurt. I trusted you. I gave you everything I had. He wiped his eyes, his voice barely above a whisper. I know. I'm sorry. We sat in silence, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on us. I thought about all the years I had spent caring for him, all the sacrifices I had made, all the dreams I had put aside. I thought about the future. I had imagined the quiet retirement, the peace, the sense of a job well done. I realized that it was gone, that I would have to start over once again. That night, I lay awake, listening to the sound of Julian moving around the house. I wondered if I could ever trust him again, if we could ever find our way back to each other. I wondered if love was enough. The next morning, I called the bank, the police, the insurance company. I started the long, painful process of trying to recover what I had lost. I knew it would be difficult, that some things, money, jewelry, trust, could never be replaced. Julian tried to make amends. He got a second job, started paying back what he could. He apologized over and over, but the words felt hollow. The damage was done. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. I tried to forgive him, to remember the boy he had been, the love we had shared. But forgiveness is not a single act, but a process, a slow, steady letting go of anger and disappointment, a willingness to see each other as flawed, complicated, and deeply human. I didn't know then if we would ever be the same, if the wounds would ever heal. But I knew that I had to try, for my sake and for his. I didn't know then how much more I would have to lose before I found my way back to him. I didn't know how much it would hurt, or how much strength it would take to forgive. But I would learn, oh, I would learn. The days after the truth came out were some of the loneliest of my life. I had always thought of myself as strong, resilient, a woman who could weather any storm. But nothing had prepared me for the pain of being betrayed by the person I love most in the world. The house felt emptier than ever, every room echoing with memories of laughter and love that now seemed impossibly far away. Julian tried to make amends, but the damage was done. He came home late, exhausted from his second job, his eyes hollow with guilt and shame. He left envelopes of cash on the kitchen table, small payments toward a debt that could never truly be repaid. He apologized over and over, but the words felt thin, insubstantial, like trying to patch a broken window with tissue paper. I tried to forgive him, to remember the boy he had been, the boy who had clung to my hand on his first day of school, who had brought me wildflowers from the garden, who had whispered, "I love you, Mamie," as I tucked him into bed. But every time I looked at him, I saw the empty envelope, the missing jewelry, the future I had worked so hard to build slipping through my fingers. The community noticed the change in us. Neighbors, who had once smiled and waved, now looked at us with suspicion or pity. I heard the whispers at the market, saw the way people crossed the street to avoid me. Some offered quiet words of support. "He's young, he'll learn, you did your best." But others were less kind. "How could you let this happen? Didn't you see the signs?" I wanted to shout that I had done everything I could, that love sometimes isn't enough, that even the best intentions can't always save someone from themselves. I stopped going to the walking group, stopped inviting friends for tea. I felt ashamed, exposed, as if everyone could see the cracks in my life. I spent my days cleaning the house, tending the garden, trying to find comfort in routine, but nothing could fill the emptiness left by Julian's betrayal. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. My sister called from Brittany, her voice tight with worry. "Marianne, you can't let this destroy you. He's still your grandson. He needs you now more than ever." I wanted to believe her, but I was so tired. Tired of being strong, tired of forgiving, tired of carrying the weight of someone else's mistakes. I wondered if I had failed Julian, if I had loved him too much or not enough, if I had made it too easy for him to take what wasn't his. The police investigation was humiliating. I had to answer questions about my finances, my relationship with Julian, my own memory. I felt like a criminal in my own home, every drawer and cupboard a potential piece of evidence. The officers were kind, but their sympathy only made me feel worse. I wanted to disappear, to erase the past few months, to go back to a time when trust was simple and love was enough. Julian's friends stopped coming around. Some sent messages of support, others disappeared without a word. I wondered if their parents had warned them to stay away, if they saw Julian as a bad influence, a cautionary tale. I saw the pain in his eyes, the way he shrank from their rejection, the way he tried to pretend it didn't matter. He started spending more time at home, helping with chores, cooking dinner, trying to rebuild the life we had lost. Sometimes, late at night, I would hear him crying in his room, and my heart would break all over again. I wanted to go to him, to hold him, to tell him that everything would be all right. but I was afraid of being hurt again, afraid of opening my heart only to have it broken once more. The hardest part was facing the future. My retirement dreams were gone. The money I had saved for years spent on debts I hadn't known existed. The house needed repairs I couldn't afford. The garden was overgrown, the shutters peeling. I tried to tell myself that I was lucky to have a roof over my head, food on the table, a grandson who was at least trying to make things right. But the bitterness lingered, a taste I couldn't wash away. I started to see a counselor at the community center, a kind woman named Helene, who listened without judgment. She helped me understand that forgiveness is not a single act, but a process, a slow, steady letting go of anger and disappointment, a willingness to see each other as flawed, complicated, and deeply human. She encouraged me to write about my feelings, to talk to Julian, to find small moments of joy in each day. Julian and I began to talk, really talk, for the first time in months. He told me about the pressure he had felt to fit in, the fear of disappointing me, the shame of his mistakes. He told me about the debts he had racked up, the friends who had led him astray, the nights he had spent lying awake, terrified of what would happen if I found out. "I'm sorry, Mamie," he said one night, his voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know how to stop." I held his hand, my own eyes wet with tears. "I know, Julian, I know you're sorry, but sorry isn't always enough. You have to earn back my trust." He nodded, determined. "I will, I promise." It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments when the old anger flared, when the pain felt too fresh to forgive. But there were also moments of hope, shared meals, quiet evenings in the garden, laughter that felt real again. I started to believe that we could rebuild, that love could survive even the deepest betrayal. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. The community's judgment faded slowly as people saw Julian working hard, making amends, trying to be better. Some never forgave, but others offered quiet words of encouragement, small acts of kindness that reminded me I was not alone. I learned to let go of the dreams I had lost, to find new ones in the life I still had. I found joy in small things: cup of tea in the morning, the scent of roses in the garden, the sound of Julian's laughter drifting through the house. I learned that healing is not about forgetting, but about making peace with the past, about choosing to move forward, even when it's hard. I didn't know then if we would ever be the same, if the wounds would ever fully heal. But I knew that I had to try, for my sake and for his. I didn't know then how much more I would have to lose before I found my way back to him. I didn't know how much it would hurt, or how much strength it would take to forgive. But I would learn. Oh, I would learn. There's a moment, after the worst has happened, when you think you've heard it all, when you believe the pain can't go any deeper, that the wound can't possibly widen. But then the truth comes out, and you realize there are still layers you haven't touched, still questions you never thought to ask. Julian's confession came on a rainy Sunday afternoon, the kind of day when the world feels small and close, when the sound of water on the roof is the only thing keeping you company. I was in the kitchen, peeling potatoes for dinner, when he came in, his face pale and drawn, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "Mamie, can we talk?" His voice was quiet, almost childlike. I set the knife down, wiped my hands on a towel, and nodded. "Of course, Julian, sit down." He sat at the table, staring at his hands. For a long time, he said nothing. I waited, my heart pounding, afraid of what was coming but knowing I had to hear it. "I need to tell you everything," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not just about the money, about all of it." I sat across from him, my hands folded in my lap, bracing myself. He started slowly, haltingly, as if the words hurt to say. He told me about the friends he'd made after school, the older boys who seemed so confident, so sure of themselves. He wanted to fit in, to be part of something, to feel like he belonged. They smoked, drank, skipped school, talked about money, and girls and cars. At first, it was just fun, sneaking out at night, sharing cigarettes behind the gym, laughing at teachers and rules. But then, it changed. The boys started talking about ways to make money: quick money, easy money. They bragged about stealing from their parents, about selling things online, about little scams that seemed harmless at first. Julian was desperate to be accepted, to prove he was one of them. He started small, taking a few euros from my purse, selling an old video game, lying about where he'd been. It felt wrong, he admitted, his voice shaking. but they all did it. They said it was normal, that everyone did it, and I wanted them to like me. I listened, my heart breaking, as he described how the lies grew, how the thefts became bigger, how the guilt gnawed at him but never quite stopped him. He told me about the first time he took money from my savings, how he promised himself he would pay it back, how he convinced himself it was just a loan, but then I needed more, he said, his eyes filling with tears. I owed them money, I made bets I couldn't pay. I was scared, Mamie. I didn't know how to get out. He told me about the night he sold my mother's locket, how he stood outside the pawn shop for an hour, crying, before finally going in. He told me about the shame he felt every time he looked at me, every time I asked about something missing, every time I trusted him with the house, the bills, the future. I wanted to tell you, he whispered. I wanted to stop, but I was afraid you'd hate me. I was afraid you'd send me away. I reached across the table, took his hand in mine. Oh, Julian, I could never hate you, but you have to understand how much this hurt me, how much I trusted you. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. We sat in silence, the rain tapping against the windows, the kitchen filled with the weight of everything he had said. I thought about all the years I had spent raising him, all the sacrifices I had made, all the dreams I had put aside. I thought about the future. I had imagined the quiet retirement, the peace, the sense of a job well done. I realized that it was gone, that I would have to start over once again. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. I wanted to forgive him, to believe that this was the end of the lies, the beginning of something new. But forgiveness is not a single act, but a process is slow, steady letting go of anger and disappointment, a willingness to see each other as flawed, complicated, and deeply human. That night, I lay awake, listening to the sound of Julian moving around the house. I wondered if I could ever trust him again, if we could ever find our way back to each other. I wondered if love was enough. The next day, Julian came to me with a plan. He wanted to pay back every euro he had taken, to sell his motorbike, to work extra hours at the garage. He wanted to go to counseling, to talk to someone about the choices he had made, the pain he was carrying. He wanted to make things right. I agreed, but I told him it would take time, that trust, once broken, is not easily repaired, that I needed to see change, not just hear promises. He nodded, determined. I'll do whatever it takes, Mamie. I want you to be proud of me again. I started to see small changes. He came home earlier, helped with chores, cooked dinner, asked about my day. He apologized, over and over, but the words felt different now, less like an excuse, more like a promise. He started going to counseling, meeting with a kind woman at the community center who helped him talk about his fears, his guilt, his hopes for the future. I tried to let go of the anger, to remember the boy he had been, the love we had shared. I tried to find joy in small things, a cup of tea in the morning, the scent of roses in the garden, the sound of Julian's laughter drifting through the house. I learned that healing is not about forgetting, but about making peace with the past, about choosing to move forward, even when it's hard. The community's judgment faded, slowly, as people saw Julian working hard, making amends, trying to be better. Some never forgave, but others offered quiet words of encouragement, small acts of kindness that reminded me I was not alone. I learned to let go of the dreams I had lost, to find new ones in the life I still had. I found joy in small things, a walk in the park, a letter from an old friend, a quiet evening with a book. I learned that forgiveness is not just for the person who hurt you, but for yourself, for the part of you that needs to let go, to heal, to move on. I didn't know then if we would ever be the same, if the wounds would ever fully heal, but I knew that I had to try, for my sake and for his. I didn't know then how much more I would have to lose before I found my way back to him. I didn't know how much it would hurt, or how much strength it would take to forgive, but I would learn. Oh, I would learn. There is a strange quiet that settles over a house after a storm. The walls seem to hold their breath, the air feels heavy, and every sound is magnified. The ticking of the clock, the creak of the floorboards, the distant hum of a car passing on the street. After Julian's confession, our home was filled with that kind of quiet. It was not the peaceful silence I had once dreamed of from my retirement, but a silence full of questions, of wounds not yet healed, of love that was still searching for a way forward. Julian kept his promise to change, but the road was long and uneven. He sold his motorbike, as he said he would, and handed me the money without a word. He picked up extra shifts at the garage, sometimes working late into the night, coming home with grease under his nails and exhaustion in his eyes. He started paying back what he could, a few euros at a time, leaving small envelopes on the kitchen table. I never asked for them, never counted the money, but I kept each envelope in a drawer, a quiet record of his effort. He went to counseling every week, sometimes twice. At first, he was reluctant to talk about it, but over time, he began to share small pieces of what he was learning. "It helps," he said one evening, stirring sugar into his tea. "It's hard, but it helps. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. I'm trying to be better." I nodded, my heart aching with a mix of pride and sadness. I wanted to believe that he could change, that we could rebuild what had been broken. But trust, once shattered, is not easily mended. There were days when I found myself watching him too closely, counting the money in my purse, locking the bedroom door out of habit. There were nights when I lay awake, replaying every argument, every missed sign, every moment when I could have done something differently. The hardest part was forgiving myself. I had always prided myself on being a good mother, a good grandmother. I had sacrificed so much for Julian, given him everything I had. And yet it had not been enough to keep him from making choices that hurt us both. I wondered if I had loved him too much, or not enough, if I had made it too easy for him to take what wasn't his. I talked about these feelings with Helene, the counselor at the community center. She listened patiently, never judging, always encouraging me to be gentle with myself. "You did your best, Marianne," she said. "You gave him love, stability, a home. But you cannot control another person's choices. All you can do is choose how you respond now." I tried to take her advice to heart. I focused on the small victories: Julian coming home on time, sharing a meal, laughing at a joke, telling me about his day. I tried to let go of the anger, to remember the boy he had been, the love we had shared. I tried to find joy in the present, to build new memories on the foundation of the old. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. The community's judgment faded, slowly, as people saw Julian working hard, making amends, trying to be better. Some never forgave, but others offered quiet words of encouragement, small acts of kindness that reminded me I was not alone. I started going to the walking group again, invited friends for tea, let myself be part of the world outside our house. But there were still hard choices to make. The money Julian had stolen was gone, and though he was doing his best to pay it back, I knew I would never recover all of it. My retirement dreams were smaller, now a repaired roof instead of a new one, a weekend at the coast instead of a trip abroad, a quiet afternoon in the garden instead of a life free from worry. I learned to find contentment in what I had, to let go of what I had lost. Julian and I talked about the future, about what would happen when he was ready to move out, about how we would stay connected even when he had a life of his own. He promised to visit, to help with the house, to be there for me as I had been there for him. I wanted to believe him, and most days I did, but there were still moments of doubt, moments when the old fear crept in, when I wondered if I could ever fully trust him again. I learned to live with that uncertainty, to accept that healing is not a straight line, that forgiveness is a choice I would have to make over and over. One evening, as we sat in the garden watching the sun set, Julian turned to me, his face serious. "Mamie, I know I can never make up for what I did, but I want you to know that I'm grateful for everything. I'm sorry for hurting you. I hope one day you can forgive me completely." I reached for his hand, squeezed it gently. "I'm trying, Julian. I really am. And I'm proud of you for trying, too." We sat in silence, the air filled with the scent of roses and the sound of birds settling in for the night. I realized that, despite everything, I still loved him fiercely. That the bond between us was not broken, only changed. I started to write again, not just in my journal, but letters to myself, to Luke, to Isabel, to the family I had lost and the family I still had. I wrote about the pain, the anger, the hope, the love. I wrote about the lessons I was learning, about the strength it takes to forgive, about the courage it takes to move forward. I didn't know what the future would hold. I didn't know if Julian and I would ever be the same, if the wounds would ever fully heal, but I knew that I had to try. For my sake and for his, I learned that healing is not about forgetting, but about making peace with the past, about choosing to move forward, even when it's hard, I learned that forgiveness is not just for the person who hurt you, but for yourself, for the part of you that needs to let go, to heal, to move on. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. As the days grew longer and the garden bloomed with new life, I found myself looking forward to each new day, to the small joys that made life worth living. I realized that I was not just surviving, was living. I was building something new, something beautiful, out of the pieces of my old life. And that, I decided, was enough. The summer after everything changed was the gentlest I could remember. The days stretched out, golden and slow, the air filled with the scent of roses and the distant sound of children playing in the square. I found myself smiling more, laughing at small things, feeling lighter than I had in years. The pain of losing my savings, the betrayal, the secrets, they were still there, but they no longer defined me. They were part of my story, but not the whole of it. Julian was still living, at home, but the tension between us had softened. He was different, now quieter, more thoughtful, more present. He still worked long hours at the garage, but he came home for dinner most nights, helped with chores, and sometimes even joined me in the garden. We talked more about real things, his dreams, his regrets, his hopes for the future. He told me about his counseling sessions, about the work he was doing to understand himself, about the ways he was learning to trust again. One evening, as we sat together on the back steps, watching the sun set over the rooftops, Julian turned to me, his face serious. "Mamie, do you ever wish things had turned out differently?" I thought for a moment, watching a pair of swallows dart through the lavender. "Sometimes, I wish we hadn't hurt each other. I wish I had seen how much you were struggling. Wish I had known how to help you." He nodded, his eyes shining. "I wish I had told you the truth sooner. I wish I hadn't been so afraid." I reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "We can't change the past, Julian, but we can choose what we do with it. We can choose to forgive, to love, to move forward." He smiled, a real, bright smile that made him look like the little boy I remembered. "I'm glad you didn't give up on me." "I never could," I said. "You're my family. That's all that matters." We sat in silence for a while, the garden quiet around us. I thought about everything we had been through, the pain, the fear, the loneliness, the anger. I thought about the nights I had spent awake, blaming myself, doubting my own memory, wondering if I was the fool everyone thought I was. I thought about the moment Julian had told the truth, the relief and heartbreak that had washed over me, the slow, steady process of healing that had followed. I realized that forgiveness was not a single act, but a journey, a choice I had to make every day, for myself as much as for Julian. I had to forgive him for the lie, for the pain, for the months of silence, but I also had to forgive myself for the things I had missed, for the ways I had failed him, for the mistakes I had made as a grandmother and as a woman. If you're still here, please don't forget to subscribe to Myla Stories. I share stories that come straight from the heart. The town, too, had begun to move on. The whispers faded, the stares softened. Some friends returned, offering tentative invitations for coffee or walks in the park. Others stayed away, their absence a quiet reminder that not all wounds heal. But I no longer felt the need to explain myself, to defend my name. I knew the truth, and so did Julian. That was enough. I found new purpose in small things, volunteering at the library, tending the garden, baking bread for the neighbors. I joined a support group for grandparents, sharing my story with others who had lost and found their families in different ways. I learned that I was not alone, that pain and forgiveness were universal, that love could survive even the deepest betrayal. Julian started talking about moving out, about finding a place of his own, about building a life that was truly his. Encouraged him, proud of the man he was becoming, grateful for the chance to watch him grow. We made plans for the future holidays together, Sunday dinners, visits to the sea. We promised to stay close, to keep talking, to never let silence grow between us again. One afternoon, as we walked through the market, Julian turned to me and said, "I'm proud of you, Mamie. You never gave up, even when I did." I smiled, tears in my eyes. "I'm proud of you, too. You found your way back." We hugged, the world spinning around us, the past and the future suspended in that single, perfect moment. As the days grew shorter and the air turned cool, I found myself reflecting on all that had happened. I thought about the house I had almost lost, the life I had almost given up on, the pain of betrayal, and the slow, hard work of forgiveness. I thought about the friends I had made, the love I had found, the sense of purpose that had returned to me. I realized that home was not just a place, but a feeling, a sense of safety, of connection, of being known. I realized that dignity was not something others could give or take away, was something I carried inside me, something I could choose every day. I still missed Luke, still grieved for the life we had shared, the family we had built, but I had learned to live with the loss, to let it be part of me without letting it define me. I had learned that healing was not about forgetting, but about making peace with the past, about choosing to move forward, even when it was hard. You take anything from my story, let it be this: no matter how much you lose, no matter how lost you feel, it is never too late to begin again. It is never too late to forgive, to love, to find your way home. Thank you for listening to my story.